Prohibition. It's a defining moment in American history. The era called the Roaring Twenties is a time of profound transformation.
Most Americans did not have a direct day-to-day relationship with the federal government. Freeze! Prohibition changed all of that.
A time of contradiction, grinding poverty for many, and decadence for others.
The whole nature of nightlife is to have fun and drink. And so the more the outside morality forces say you can't do that or we're going to crack down on the way you do that, the more people say, to hell with it, we're doing it twice as big.
An era when criminals terrorize the streets. Yet it still captures our imaginations.
It's really revealing that we find these gangsters so fascinating that we cannot get enough. We all fantasize about doing things that we know are wrong and getting away with it. And then there's another part of us that wants to see him caught.
It is an iconic period of American history, with countless secrets left to uncover.
We often think that we understand Prohibition, but as we delve into the topic, it's like the proverbial onion. It's what makes history so great. You peel it back and there's a surprise after a surprise after a surprise.
It's not just a kind of one-off weird story of the past. It really helps tell a lot of American history.
Today, America enjoys a relationship to alcohol that puts the emphasis on celebration.
The United States has always been a country that has consumed quite a lot of alcohol. In the early republic, water was often very dangerous. Alcohol was considered much safer. It was actually cheaper than tea or coffee.
George Washington even included beer in his soldiers' rations. But the new country also has its puritanical roots, and it's these that give rise to the temperance movement.
Temperance is part of a larger series of moral crusades in the 1800s that include things like abolition against slavery and suffrage for women.
As saloons proliferate, the backlash from the temperance movement only gets stronger.
The movement for Prohibition gets real steam in the 1900s and 1910s. They quickly move beyond Carrie Nation, who is in some ways a sideshow, more entertaining than successful. They organize the Anti-Saloon League and the Women's Christian Temperance Union, which had been around for a while, into local movements.
The challenge facing the Prohibition Party and other like-minded groups is real. Saloons have a well-established place in American society, as do the beer and liquor they serve.
When you think about getting a drink, you have to really put it in the context of history, and you really have to think of it as something that's part of our culture.
Derek Brown is a leading mixologist in the classic cocktail movement.
There's no doubt that Prohibition had an impact on the way that we think about drinking.
The title First American Cocktail remains in dispute. But the whiskey sour of 1862 is a serious contender.
The whiskey sour is such a great drink, and there's so many ways to make it. You can put a float of wine on top of it, it becomes a New York sour. You can put an egg white in it. There's lots of ways to take that basic drink and turn it into something exceptional.
4 decades after its invention, the whiskey sour is facing serious political headwinds. Temperance groups are making progress. By 1909, Prohibition advocates, now collectively known as the Dries, have 9 state legislatures in their camp. They fight under the banner of a healthy sobriety, but it's a war with a hidden agenda.
Alcohol is not the central story of Prohibition. There are people who are certainly opposed to alcohol, but really what they're fighting about is a clash of 2 civilizations in America.
Their enemy? Not just alcohol, but European immigrants.
American life is changing. Cities are getting larger and larger. So as the United States changes in very profound ways, some people are happier with those changes and some people are unhappy with those changes.
The Dries are fighting a political fight to win a cultural war.
They're up against the largest surge of immigration in American history. Between 1892 and 1920, almost 12 million people enter the United States by way of Ellis Island. They will make their contributions to American society in ways both large and small. The Ellis Island Immigration Museum documents the arrival of the ancestors of nearly half of all Americans alive today. Librarian and historian Barry Marino has authored 7 books in the Images of America series to tell their story through photographs.
To get a really good idea of the changing face of immigration in the days of Ellis Island is to consider the photographs taken by the chief clerk here, a man named Augustus Sherman. He took hundreds of photographs of immigrants that were detained, and these pictures are wonderful testimonies of the way of immigrants dressed in the days of Ellis Island.
These new immigrants not only dress differently than established Americans, they drink differently.
Americans watched them in huge communities, and they saw lots of Germans, and they saw that the Germans drank a lot of beer. Even with meals, the Americans were not used to this. To them, you didn't drink any alcohol with meals. It was not just done by what they considered good, respectable Christians. The temperance movement and other similar movements were to gain control of American society once again.
Organizing around alcohol is in some ways, a politically correct way to go after immigrants. It's not entirely polite to say, I want to get all the Catholics out of America. But it's very polite to say alcohol is ruining society.
Captains of industry also flock to the temperance cause. They are at war with a fledgling labor movement dominated by immigrants. And one of the places they clash is the saloon.
For management, the saloon became very scary because managers couldn't walk into the saloon and be anonymous. They were quite obvious who they were. From the workers' perspective, the saloon was very important. You needed networks of checks and balances, and so the saloon was a big part of this.
Saloons are political centers of power. They're the political institutions that's getting the laborers and the factory workers and the longshoremen out to vote on election day.
The male-dominated saloons have political clout. But a new power is on the rise. One dedicated to eradicating the saloon.
The great genius of the Prohibition movement was an otherwise unprepossessing figure named Wayne Wheeler. And he became the leading strategist and tactician for the Anti-Saloon League.
He's not a big, loud activist. He's not a stump speaker. He's a very organized, very quiet manipulator or negotiator.
Wheeler not only lobbies effectively, he builds one of the most unusual coalitions in American history.
Women who want suffrage want to have more control of their lives, and prohibition is one way to do that. People who feel that immigration is wrong also can be part of this. People who feel that cities are dens of iniquity, and part of the reason is there's too much alcohol available, they can be part of the Anti-Saloon League.
Wheeler brings together the progressive women's movements, major industrialists, and anti-immigrant hate groups.
They have this moral panic on their side that the wets just don't. The forces of alcohol just keep drinking and don't organize very effectively.
The wets also fail to recognize the threat posed by a seemingly unrelated movement: the push for income taxation.
Liquor taxes add up to, at times, 40% of the income of the American government. So people in the Anti-Saloon League and people who want prohibition realize that if there is no other source of income, they will never get prohibition passed because the government doesn't have enough money to operate.
But the 1913 passage of the 16th Amendment, establishing a permanent federal income tax, creates a new source of revenue.
Only then was it possible to get rid of alcohol and the tax collections that came with that.
Wayne Wheeler seizes the opportunity to go big. Rather than just change laws at the state level, he declares that the Anti-Saloon League will pursue nothing less than an amendment to the Constitution.
It was a very ambitious strategy. It was a strategy intended to make prohibition permanent. No constitutional amendment had ever been rescinded. As difficult as it would be to get it passed, once it was ratified, it was there permanently.
1 year later, as victory over alcohol still seems a distant dream, a great war explodes over Europe. The bloody conflict will pave the way for Prohibition. By 1915, Germany and Austria are waging war on all of Europe. The United States remains on the sidelines of what will become known as World War I. But anti-German sentiment is mounting.
German immigrants founded brewing as a major American industry. This became eventually a source of conflict and resentment.
There are saloons all across America. 200,000 saloons in America, which is 23 saloons for every Starbucks franchise there is today. Just imagine saloons everywhere. So when World War I breaks out and there are signs for German beer all across the country in people's communities, it's such an obvious target.
By 1915, Germany and Austria are waging war on all of Europe. The United States remains on the sidelines of what will become known as World War I. But anti-German sentiment is mounting.
German immigrants founded brewing as a major American industry. This became eventually a source of conflict and resentment.
There are saloons all across America. 200,000 saloons in America, which is 23 saloons for every Starbucks franchise there is today. Just imagine saloons everywhere. So when World War I breaks out and there are signs for German beer all across the country in people's communities, it's such an obvious target.
In Washington, D.C., the Anti-Saloon League's Wayne Wheeler is making political hay. Conveniently for him, the largest employer in the city, after the federal government, is a German-American brewer. His name is Christian Heyrick. Garrett Peck, author and historian, is an expert on this era in Washington, D.C. This massive mansion in the heart of the nation's capital is Christian Heyrick's former home.
Hey, Kim. Hi, nice to see you.
Come on in. Welcome to Christian Heyrick's house.
Like many brewers, Heyrick is a first-generation American.
He grew up in a tavern-keeping family in Germany, and he immigrated to Washington in 1872 in his 20s, and this house was his "I have arrived" statement. He really considered himself an American. He always said, "Germany was my mother, but America is my bride."
Heyrick is not only a proud American, but a savvy businessman. When he first arrives in the country, he buys up a failing brewery. Within a decade, he has built a brewing empire.
This is a huge facility. It looks like a German castle in its scale. Remarkable.
With Germany wreaking havoc across Europe, German Americans like Heyrick are lightning rods for anti-German sentiment.
Given that the Heyricks were such a prominent Washington family, how did they really cope with the anti-German hysteria?
In Christian's autobiography, he talks about just not even having the energy to pay attention to the Prohibition fight because he feels he's spending so much energy defending against his anti-German accusations.
Like they're spies for Germany or something, right?
These are his 3 children. So we have Chris Jr., and then we have Anita, middle daughter, and Carla. Carla was very young. She was in elementary school. She was called the Little Hun at school. Chris Jr., also in this picture, had a wireless radio up in the turret of this house, and the Department of Justice made them take it away because I think they were suspicious that, you know, there was some kind of spy activity happening through that radio. There was a rumor published in the newspaper that Christian Heyrick had committed suicide. When Christian spoke to the editor said, "I'm happy to print a retraction," and he said, "Just keep me dead."
As German brewers like Christian Heyrick struggle to prove their patriotism, Wayne Wheeler's single-issue lobbying proves incredibly effective. By the end of 1916, 17 states have passed their own prohibition laws. But to get a constitutional amendment for alcohol prohibition, he'll need 19 more. Then, on April 2nd, 1917, the United States enters the war to end all wars. In just one battle, the U.S. Army loses 26,277 men and suffers almost 100,000 casualties. Bartenders respond with gallows humor.
The French 75 is one of those drinks that it looks very elegant, it looks very sweet, but it is named after a piece of artillery. And that's what you have to keep in mind while you're drinking it.
And not just any piece of artillery. The French 75mm is a key weapon in the Allies' arsenal in the European theater, firing a 16-pound shrapnel bomb on a time delay fuse. Like the cocktail, it takes a while to feel the impact, but when you do, it's unforgettable. Meanwhile, another all-out war is being waged on German beer.
It was very easy for the prohibitionists to point their finger at these people and say, see, these guys, they're trying to destroy our war effort to help their German cousins. We have to put them out of business. They're using up grain. Our soldiers are drunk. There are all these reasons we have to get rid of alcohol to stop them.
The 18th Amendment comes up at exactly the right time for this to be passed.
When Germany is finally defeated in November of 1918, its loss is closely followed by the final victory of the Drags. January 16, 1919, Nebraska becomes the 36th state to ratify the 18th Amendment. Prohibition is now the law of the land.
So after Prohibition comes into effect, you have these thousands of saloons that are spread throughout the country, and they suddenly have a decision to make in terms of how they might weather the storm of a suddenly dry America. And so you have estimates that in the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan, for example, 1/3 of saloons immediately shuttered. 1/3 of saloons tried to wait it out by selling other kinds of beverages and foods. And another 1/3 of saloons converted into soda fountains and ice cream shops as this new model of public space where a much expanded group of consumers could come to eat and drink.
Institution takes their place. The speakeasy.
You had to speak easy, speak discreetly about the very existence of something such as an establishment like that.
And when it comes to speakeasies, going big means New York City and the 21 Club have already run several joints before they launched this iconic bar. Still open today at 21 West 52nd Street. Avery Fletcher is the in-house historian.
They had a relationship with the next-door neighbors. They built a 2.5-ton door between the foundation of number 21 and number 19 that had a secret camouflage lock. Here we are at the entrance to our secret wine cellar. As you can see, it looks like a brick wall, but there's actually a very special key, this 18-inch meat skewer. Now this key, in the right crack in the brick, will actually pop the lock to the cellar.
There are more than 2,000 cases of wine hidden in the secret cellar, and as many stories, some of which may be apocryphal.
During the time of Prohibition, there was only one table down here in the wine cellar, and it belonged to one specific guest, the mayor of New York City, Jimmy Walker. In June of 1932, the feds were here for over 6 hours scouring the building. Mayor Jimmy Walker was actually seated in his table amidst 2,000 cases of illegal contraband, so he got a little frustrated, called his captain to bring him a telephone, and then he called the New York City police chief and actually had all of the feds' cars ticketed and towed away while they were raiding the restaurant. So after 6 hours of searching the city's most famous speakeasy, they didn't find a drop to drink, and they didn't find their cars on return to the street.
They weren't all the 21 Club. You could have a speakeasy that consisted of 2 chairs, a table, and a bottle of rot gut. Any place that you could serve alcohol, you were therefore in a speakeasy.
A taste for the forbidden isn't the only thing luring customers to these speakeasies.
What kind of music are you going to hear? You're going to hear hot jazz.
And the city with the best hot jazz was Chicago, Illinois.
This is the Green Mill, one of Chicago's great legendary jazz clubs and a place that goes way back to Prohibition. And according to legend, one of the places that Al Capone loved to hang out.
Jonathan Eig is a journalist and author. He's written biographies on some of America's biggest celebrities, including the jazz-loving gangster, Al Capone.
Capone loved music. He loved jazz. He employed some of the best jazz musicians in his clubs. He knew Louis Armstrong. He knew these guys. They all said he was a guy who liked to hang around and sometimes showed up at rehearsals as well as to the shows. This would have been Capone's table, his favorite seat, and you can see why. You get the front door over here, you get the side door over here, and if you're sitting here and enjoying the music, you can see everything. Nobody's getting in without you being aware of it.
Of course, Al Capone isn't just a jazz fan. He's well on his way to becoming America's most infamous mobster.
Capone is the first celebrity gangster.
1919. A young Al Capone moves his family to Chicago to escape a retaliatory hit from a rival gang. There, he comes under the tutelage of the gangster Johnny Torrio.
Torrio was Al Capone's most important mentor. Torrio tried to teach Capone to think of himself as a professional man. Capone started out by getting business cards that said he was the owner of a secondhand furniture store. And this is very much in the Torrio mold, to think of yourself as a member of society who's contributing, who's making money, and just happen to be doing these sleazy things on the side.
Torrio's one of the first to recognize the opportunity presented by Prohibition.
Torrio's the one who says, well, let's go to the breweries before they start gathering dust and see if we can agree to operate them.
Outfits like Torrio and Capone's aren't the only ones raking it in. America is in the midst of an unprecedented crime wave, bolstered by a new invention that will leave the police outgunned. Diane Wendt curates the Smithsonian National Museum of American History's impressive collection of medicinal whiskey bottles.
This is one of my favorites. You can really tell that this one has been enjoyed already. This is a Gibson's Pure Rye whiskey, 12 years old, aged in wood. You see the representation of the pharmaceutical prescription, ERX Spiritus Fermenti. The estimate for how many doctors had a permit for writing the prescriptions was somewhere between maybe 22 and 29%. You could just take down the bar sign and put up the drugstore sign and you'd still be good.
Prohibition was almost unenforceable from day one. The feds didn't put any money into it in the first place. They might have expected the Chicago Police Department and other local police departments to do the job for them, but that was never really going to happen.
Either the police officer didn't care, or the police officer could be bought for $5, and for $5 a week to keep you out of my speakeasy, no problem at all. So you had alcohol available in major cities for anybody who wanted it.
Chicago becomes the poster child for everything that's wrong with Prohibition.
Capone knew that Chicago police were wildly underpaid. A starting cop made about the same as a starting dog catcher. So you slip these guys a few extra bucks a week, and they're going to be grateful.
January 24th, 1925. Chicago mob leader Johnny Torrio is sprayed with gunfire. Miraculously, he survives.
When he was in the hospital, it was Capone who sat by his bed. It was Capone who guarded the door, the hospital room, to make sure that Torrio was going to be okay. And it was Capone who spoke to reporters. So this is really the first time you see Capone beginning to emerge as a potential leader.
While Capone embraced the power of the press, he didn't rely on it. Like most gangsters of the era, his authority came from the barrel of a gun.
The Thompson submachine gun has many nicknames. Most common is Tommy gun. In Prohibition days, it was known as the Chicago typewriter or a Chicago organ grinder because Chicago had the most famous gang in the United States at the time, with Al Capone in charge.
At the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, David Miller is the curator of Armed Forces history.
This is the Thompson submachine gun. Was designed by General John T. Thompson and he designed it to be used in the trenches in Europe during the First World War. Unfortunately, they didn't get to Europe in time to participate in the war. Afterwards, Colt tried to find a market for them in the United States, but they were pretty expensive. It was over $200. That works out to over $2,000 nowadays. Only the federal government could pretty much afford to buy these things. Local police departments didn't have a budget for that. They were lucky if they had the budget to purchase anything that could compete with a Thompson submachine gun.
This is what the Chicago Police Department had. This is what Al Capone's crew had.
Mike Wolf is the executive firearms expert at Loudon Guns of America.
This was a giant leap forward in the development of firearms. So you have the safety, you have fire, you have single shot, where one pull of the trigger is one shot, and you have full auto, where one pull of the trigger until you let go of the trigger continues to fire the weapon. It was lightweight for the time compared to any other things that were out there. The gun itself can be shortened. It can go in a violin case. They made specific cases for it, but the violin was the most common carry case. You do not need to be a sniper to operate this weapon. You can spray and pray, as they say. The gun itself could use a 50-round drum and a 100-round drum. It also was able to take stick magazines. It takes about 6 minutes to load the 100-round drum, but only takes about 10 seconds to unload it.
My sense would be to look the other way pretty quickly if I knew that the bad guys had a submachine gun and I had a .38 caliber revolver.
Outgunned, but not to be outwitted, the government soon adds a new weapon to its arsenal: the wiretap. When Prohibition becomes part of the United States Constitution, its advocates believe America will become a paradise. Instead, corruption infects every level of the government, while urban violence tears apart communities, and gangsters grow at wealth and power.
Despite all of the efforts of the Coast Guard, even the spanking new Border Patrol, all of whom tried to rein in violations, Americans were hell-bent on getting drinks, and they succeeded in doing so.
There are loopholes everywhere, and bartenders come up with a cocktail to celebrate one of the most notorious.
The 3-mile limit. 3 miles out, you could take a lot of your friends on your yacht and you could drink with impunity. Then, Congress decided that they would extend the territory to 12 miles.
Bartenders mark the new law with a new cocktail: the 12-mile limit. And Americans keep right on drinking.
Before Prohibition, the federal government was a bit player in criminal justice. And it's only with the new wave of crime that federal government officials launch a new war on crime.
It's a new role for the government, and there's a new bureau ready to take it on.
The Prohibition Bureau establishes the first national policing force.
Created in 1920 specifically to enforce the Volstead Act, the Prohibition Bureau gets off to a rocky start.
The Prohibition Bureau was kept out of the civil service, and it became jobs that were handed out as political favors. These people were the most viable, corruptible law enforcement officials in the country.
The Prohibition Bureau is so corrupt that J. Edgar Hoover, the new head of the Bureau of Investigation, keeps his distance.
J. Edgar Hoover was deeply concerned about the corruption of the Prohibition Bureau. He sought to measure his own professionalism of the Bureau of Investigation as against the lawlessness of Prohibition agents, as against the corruption that ran up and down the federal enforcement chain relative to Prohibition.
Bootleggers, working hand in glove with corrupt officials, become increasingly powerful. And at first, they run their businesses with impunity. But starting in the mid-20s, the Prohibition Bureau both cleans up its act and expands its operations.
The Bureau of Prohibition's budget was around $15 million. So proportionally, in today's terms, that's about $200 million. It was at least 6 times the size of the budget of the Bureau of Investigation. You see allocations of the federal government toward law enforcement rising every year about 20% during the 1920s. And it's as a result of Prohibition that the federal government's visibility, that its authority massively increases.
The Supreme Court also plays a crucial role in the expansion of federal power, courtesy of a decision that is still setting the stage for some of today's most controversial headlines.
Whether it's the NSA and whether it's on the internet, what is the government's right to secure information from private citizens in order to try to identify criminals or identify terrorists?
The acceptance of wiretap evidence, when authorized as admissible evidence in American courts, derives directly from Prohibition.
Wiretapping has been around since the 1890s, but most police departments don't see a use for it. That changes in 1924. A former cop, Roy Olmsted, is running a bootlegging operation along the Pacific coast. Prohibition agents listen in on his phone calls to get the evidence they need to take him down.
It was highly controversial, the tapping of phones to secure evidence. It brought up the issue of privacy, and the court came down on the side of the federal government's right to intervene in the private spaces and private conversations of Americans.
The one dissenter was Justice Brandeis, who said that wiretapping was illegal because it is implied in the Constitution that we have the right to be let alone. And that was the precise phrase that was quoted in Roe v. Wade 40 years later. So it had profound effects on American law.
Despite all the effort, the actual nationwide impact is minimal. Sting operations only snare a small proportion of bootleggers. Soon, however, the government's campaign will cost thousands of human lives, dead from poisonous alcohol. Shine.
So people can actually go to the hardware store, buy all the spare parts, and now you can have your own still inside your own house. This was something that the average American Joe could take on if they wanted to and make a lot of money on the side, tax-free.
Little better than rot gut. Most moonshine is distilled from maximum yield rather than quality, with a wicked hangover all but guaranteed. Prohibition bartenders soon devise a workaround.
The Corpse Reviver number 2 is a hangover cure. Turns out that citrus awakens the senses. So I think that you really could say that this helps to wake you up. One of the funny things about the Corpse Reviver number 2 is that nobody seems to know what happened to Corpse Reviver number 1. Well, it did exist, it had to have existed, but nobody cares anymore. This drink is so delicious that it would eclipse any drink before or after it.
Hangover cure, or not, a Corpse Reviver stands or falls on the quality of the gin it's mixed with. At New Columbia's Gin Distillery in Northeast Washington, D.C., Garrett Peck gets a hands-on lesson in gin distillation with co-founder John Usselton.
So these are going to be a couple of Prohibition-era stills that you would have found in basements and garages, barns all across the United States. And it works exactly the same way as the big still does. Mash goes into the bottom of this pot. We start heating it up, which is going to vaporize that alcohol. And that vapor is going to travel up the pipe, come across this arm, travel down this tube. And this is our condenser. So you're going to have cold water running in here and out here, and that vapor is going to condense back into a liquid, and it'll come down and it'll flow out the bottom here.
Even without a still, bootleg entrepreneurs had another way.
Bathtub gin, the most iconic gin that emerges from Prohibition. What exactly is bathtub gin?
So if you don't have all this distillation equipment, you can still make basically a gin at home using repurposed industrial alcohol.
Yum.
Yeah. Basically anything with alcohol in it, people were trying to use.
But there's a big downside to industrial alcohol. Its foul taste. The bootleggers' workaround? Spices.
You put all these things in there, let them macerate for about 3 days, and it'll cover up a lot of those flavors and give you something that's really palatable. Can't have gin without juniper.
Before Prohibition, industrial alcohol is taxed at a lower rate than beer, wine, and spirits. To deter human consumption and tax evasion, it's deliberately contaminated with noxious chemical additives. But during Prohibition, people's tolerance for foul tasting increases, and bootleggers in turn add more botanicals to disguise their product.
We've been talking about bathtub gin, but where does the bathtub actually come in?
Well, you'll notice that this is a pretty tall container. In the 20s, people's sinks just were not that tall, but their bathtubs were.
Okay.
So you would top this off with water to cut it down to a little bit lower proof.
And a lot more product to go sell.
Exactly, which is the whole point.
John made this bathtub gin with neutral spirits and a Prohibition-era recipe for a powerful disguise.
It's a very strong flavor. You would not want to drink this straight up.
Prohibition is clearly not working.
This is not a country that likes to have freedoms taken away. We're a country that has always expanded freedom, a country that's built on freedom. When you tell people they can't drink, you know, you're in for trouble.
Americans saw the corruption of a lot of these enforcement groups and really the great violence that they brought into particular neighborhoods.
Corruption and violence. Organized crime. Thousands dead from poisonous liquor. Prohibition has become a national nightmare. And it all comes to a head with one of the most shocking crimes of the century. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre.
A couple of cars roll up. Some guys get out, they look like police. And they line these guys up against the wall. Shoot them all dead. People saw these pictures, and it was horrifying.
This is a mythic moment in American history.
The images tell it all. After a decade of prohibition, the end result is carnage. America realizes something has to change. Prohibition is careening towards its final days.